So please, a big round of applause for Graham McAllister. The sound is great. We have a fantastic speaker with us tonight, and let's have a cool round of applause, a virtual round of applause, please. So Graham is a founder, he's still a founder of the Player Research. He was the founder. I don't know how to phrase that. Actually, he has won a lot of awards, and he's so known for everything which is related to user experience and player research. So he's pretty much owning that topic, and he's consulting still a lot of studios. Has had an impact on so many interesting games, and so round of applause please for Graham, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
I have to be honest, I'm a little bit tired, and if we weren't having this call, I think I'd be having a little nap right now, if I'm being honest.
Oh.
But so you've kept me awake, which is good anyway. And it's only 6:30 here in the UK. It's not late or anything.
So do you want to quickly tell us where you're based right now? How is also obviously the big thing, the big topic? How's the corona situation right now? How are you doing at the moment?
Everything is good. Personally speaking, I can't say about the UK. So I'm in Brighton, which is on the south coast of the UK, just underneath London. The next stop is France, I guess. As far as the coronavirus is going, for me it's fine. My life doesn't change too much. I sit in front of a computer and I drink some tea, as I'm sure you're aware.
What tea are you drinking?
Oh, it's so boring. It's English breakfast or Irish breakfast. It might be, actually. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's good.
But life is good. I must say, I have no complaints, but thanks for asking.
Okay. So did the coronavirus affect you somehow, or?
So I guess I'm a consultant in video games research, user research. So normally the way I work is I would fly to the company. So I physically, get on a plane and go there and sit beside the design team to do stuff, which we'll talk about. Mm-hmm. But obviously that's no more. So the thing that's really changed is just it went virtual. We do it online. We get onto Zoom, and the designers or developers get into a virtual space now. It's not quite as good, if I'm honest. I don't think so anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's nearly as good, and I'm okay with that.
Do you think it will replace a lot of on-site meetings in the future?
I think development may go more remote anyway. Maybe as a result of this, but also maybe as just a way of attracting the best talent. The chances of all the best talent living in your physical location is so low.
Yeah,
that's just not likely. So if you genuinely need to attract specific people for your team, you may have to go remote anyway. Yeah. And lots of studios do that. So
yeah.
So personally, I must say, I've really enjoyed it. I've attended 3 or 4 conferences remotely. I have spoken with design teams remotely, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience. So I'm not sure how your students like virtual lectures, but
I don't know.
Virtual.
So do you chat? How do you like the virtual lectures and everything? How are you doing with that? Yeah, but how do you think, will it change the games industry? Do you think this will have an impact? I mean, I think, was it Twitter? Did Twitter announce that they will have remote work available also in the future?
Yeah, they did. Speaking from my discipline, so I'm in games user research, or I should say, I'm sort of in games user research because I'm kind of moving out of it to a certain extent. Oh. We'll come to that, I guess.
Yeah.
So because, the company I founded, we had to get players into a physical location to do play testing for them. So we would recruit specific people, they would arrive, we'd put a new unreleased video game in front of them. Mm. So obviously that's a very, very difficult, if not impossible, challenge now. And most of the games user research studios, either within a studio or not, all those activities have pretty much ceased.
Yeah.
So what has happened is you've seen an increase in remote user research, where you sit at home and play a game, and the data or video, whatever the data looks like, goes back to the studio, back to the research team. So personally, I thought that's the way things should have went anyway. So if anything, it just sped it up, I honestly, when I started my company, I thought that in-lab research had a finite lifespan. I always thought of it like that. It's good. It's arguably the gold standard. I'll say arguably because we could definitely debate that. But I still thought it was finite because if games are global, then having one studio in a certain location of the world just doesn't make the best sense. So I think it could be good for the game industry that not only the team's more dispersed, but also the research behind the players arguably is going to go that way as well. And I think that should result in better research and better games.
You're very good, yeah. So do you think data collection might be just trying to sneak into the topic? No, let's go somewhere else first.
I'm trying to read the comments as well. Let's see what they're saying. They got more international, exactly, more international research. I think international research, culturalization as well.
Yeah.
Culturalization is an aspect that has been massively overlooked in video games. I don't mean localization, but more culturalization.
Absolutely.
So I do think that we'll see a rise in that as well. Pretty similar, game dev. Is that still all C++? Someone's asked about a computer language. I'm not a developer. I am a computer scientist in my background.
But I pretty much announced you as someone who knows everything. No pressure.
It's very kind. So I'll re-announce myself as someone who knows nothing.
Can we go back here? So this is actually something where we should start. I would love, if you agree, I would love to hear a little bit about your background. So what is your story? How did you...
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, just a small question to start.
Okay, so I'll keep it brief. But I'll say, generally speaking, I was always interested in both creativity side of things and science. And that's from a kid. So I liked like art and music. Arguably more than science. So I was always interested in both. At university, however, I did a bachelor's degree in software engineering. And then I did a PhD in computer graphics. So image compression, like basically low-level programming, and not even C++. So I was interested in basically how to make things smaller. And this is a time when things like fractal compression or wavelets were in fashion, maybe even voxels. I wish I had stuck with voxels. Maybe I could have developed Minecraft back then. So this is like 1996. I started my PhD. So I was very much a computer scientist, and one of the optional courses in my software engineering degree was human-computer interaction. And I thought back then, why would anybody take that? What a waste of time. Basically, if you weren't talking directly to the computer at the lowest possible level, I wasn't interested. So the idea of talking to a human appalled me. It really did. It was just everything I did not want. Little did I know how my life would go, and 20 years later. But so that's very much where I came from. Was very much low-level computer programming is what I was interested in. When I finished my PhD, I got a job as a programmer in telecoms, so I did network programming. And then it was fine, it was interesting. I was in the research division, so I was interested in, as part of a small team, coming up with new ways of doing stuff. But I wanted a more creative job, and so I left to go back to academia as a lecturer, an academic. But I didn't want to be a straight computer science lecturer, so I got a job in music technology.
Oh, okay.
Where my job, yeah. So I got back to my original roots, which was music, actually. So my job was to teach music technology students computer science. So computer programming. I keep it hidden. I removed it from my LinkedIn as well. So I change that stuff all the time.
It's just on YouTube and on Twitch now. So
exactly.
We'll keep your secrets.
Nobody knows. But I was in this center for music research. It was probably one of the first, one of only two in Europe, arguably. But everybody in the building, students to staff, you had to do two things. Everybody had to play an instrument, and everybody had to be able to program a computer. So that meant everybody knew the language of music, and everybody, knew at least one or more computer languages.
Cool.
So that's where I came from, was this mixture of creativity and, but in that job was interesting because that's where I realized that designing for humans, because we were interested in musical interfaces and things like that, that's where I started to get interested in human-computer interaction. And I realized that no matter how good a computer programmer you were, unless somebody could actually use what you made, it didn't matter. It was just irrelevant. So my focus in that job moved from, let's make a widget, let's make some fancy computer program, to let's make something somebody can use, because arguably that's the greater vision. That's what's going to work. And I got more interested in that, and eventually I moved from Queen's University in Northern Ireland, where I was from, to Sussex University in the UK to join basically a group of researchers who were world-renowned in human-computer interaction. So Sussex University is very highly regarded in human-computer interaction. The other advantage of moving to Brighton in the UK, where Sussex University is it had a very active video game community. So there was lots of, at the time, this is 2007, there were AAA video game studios there. And I knew before moving countries, it's not a big jump, but moving from Northern Ireland to England, I knew that I'm going to move for two reasons. One is to pursue in a greater depth human-computer interaction research, and specifically to apply that research to the video game industry. So those two things together was the core reason I moved. And my first meeting ever when I moved to England was not with the academics, it was with Disney, BlackRock Game Studio. So I pretty much ignored the academic side. I was straight and built my links with the games industry, saying, well, I want to understand how you make games. What are your problems? What challenges are you facing? How are your games doing? That was the thing that fascinated me. So anyway, that's the short version.
Just a quick question here. Like, have you been a big player or like gamer at that point? Because what did draw you, like, pull you directly towards the games industry?
Yeah, I was always a gamer. It's typical of many people in this job, I guess, from a very, very young age, like 10 years old or so. So the Atari 2600, I think, was the first console, or the ZX81, the precursor to the ZX Spectrum, would have been the first computer. It had 1K of RAM, if you can imagine, 1K. So things were different. So yes, I've always been a gamer, and I knew that as a gamer, but also as someone in human-computer interaction, that these game developers were making fundamental mistakes, that the games could have been so much better. Their vision was only partially achieved. They went through all this time and all this passion and energy to make a game, but they could have done a better job, I felt, if they had have understood people better. So they understood tech, they knew how to make a thing, but I felt their understanding of people was incredibly poor. And that proved to be true, because when I interviewed them, the first paper I published as an academic, I think it's a book chapter somewhere, was I interviewed 3 or 4 local game studios about how they made games. And I asked the question as part of that interview, how do you know that players will play this the way that you want? And they didn't really know. It was they were guessing, essentially, no better than guessing.
Wow.
Yeah, so then I started a studio. I should have mentioned that bit. As an academic, I happened to move to England at a time when the university was giving funding for spin-out companies, and they asked academics, has anybody got an idea to start a company? And I said, well, how about a video game research lab that focuses on the human side? We'll start a playtesting lab. We'll bring players in and put them in front of unreleased video games in an attempt to understand the design better. Are they playing it the way the designer wants? Does the designer even know the way it should be played? There's another question. I think some researchers often say things like, well, we help designers achieve their vision. And I'm not sure I agree with that definition, because I'm not even sure designers know what they want. So I may say things today which are against the norm. I should have said that as well.
Absolutely. Please go crazy.
Don't please say that. But I mean, asking designers, the last year of my life, we're skipping forward, I've tried to figure out, do you know what you're making?
Yeah.
And that that's not always true. You know, it sounds like an easy question, but hey, we're jumping around already. I'm going to check the forum to see if your students have asked. Someone's doing an internship with Amazon. Amazon Game Studios or Amazon? They didn't say.
Okay, so what inspired you to finally like really start up a company? I mean, it's a huge step, just jumping from academia to the industry, and then not just like working in the industry, but just directly starting up an entirely new company. What was your inspiration?
Sorry to interrupt. There were two steps. The first was the easy one, where the university gave me funding to try it out. And if you had have went on the data and said, is this a company? He probably would have said no. In other words, the amount of income that company made, it was maybe enough for a university project. It was more income than probably lots of the other ones made, arguably, or other university initiatives make. But it wasn't enough to build a studio. So that was interesting. I had to figure out, there's not enough income here to do it. But I still went ahead and I quit both jobs. I quit my little startup on the side at the university, and I quit my academic job to find player research, to do it full time. I think that was the strangest part, and it wasn't quite crazy. I mean, it looks crazy in some ways, saying that the data says this isn't a company, and then going ahead and doing it. That sounds odd. But I put some very strict definitions on it. As a typical computer scientist, I had limits and boundaries. So I said I would spend 1 year of my life. At the time, I would spend half of my savings to start the company. And I wouldn't spend more than that. I wouldn't spend more than 1 year, and I wouldn't spend half of my money. That was it. They were fixed. And if either ran out, then that was it. It was tried. It was done. So that's the other thing that the real inspiration came from. If I thought somebody else would have done it, I remember the very moment I was walking to university. I was walking to work, and the final thing that made me start the company was, if somebody else does this before me, how would I feel?
Oh.
And I remember thinking, I'll not say this is going to be on YouTube, so I'll not say what I thought, but I would have thought I would be annoyed. I'd be annoyed about that if somebody else does it. And so I knew during that walk, I know exactly where I was. I knew where I was standing.
Yeah.
That's how vivid, that memory is. That's when I knew it was definitely going to happen. No matter else, this was definitely going to go ahead.
That's very interesting, yeah. Huh.
So I think maybe your students have that. I don't know what they're making, but if you're ever making a tool or an algorithm or a game, once you get that lightning bolt, it's like, look, nobody else is going to do this unless I do it. So it's a really good feeling. It's a very motivating feeling, because nothing else matters. You're definitely going to see that through.
This might be an uncomfortable question, but how was it? How was the starting phase? Like this is something. Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, there's things Sorry, go on. I'm going to keep quiet. Go on.
No, I think you already know where I'm pointing at. So.
Ask it again. Sorry. Go on, please.
I would just love to hear what you're gonna say now.
There's things I can't say about the start, except to say that there were moments that were incredibly uncomfortable. Incredibly uncomfortable. But I think looking back, all in all, it was fine. I think I was lucky. Let's talk about luck for a second. This could be luck in any idea. So at the time, there was no other games user research studio to put. There's nobody I could point to and say, well, they're doing it, so I should be able to do it. There was companies doing it a little bit and things like that. There were certainly freelancers that existed, but there was no studio dedicated to just doing this. That's one thing, just to get out there. But the other thing was that on the luck side, it was the rise of free to play. So this is the start of January 2012. Free to play, especially the in-app purchasing side of free to play, became really popular around 2010, 2011, and we saw that rise in 2012. And so you have to remember, when I had my little studio as part of the university, I was going out to AAA studios and asking them, hey, can we do play testing for you? And the answer was pretty much, no, we're not interested. And one of the reasons is they pretty much got their money anyway. They were either work for hire, so they were paid to make the game, or the game was a licensed IP, so they knew it was going to sell a certain amount, or they did very little incentive, basically, to do games user research. It was low. Let's leave it at that. But when free-to-play came out, and I'm starting my company on that wave, you only got money if you understand the player, right? So we're going to make an experience for you, and you only, that studio will only get money if the player decides to pay them. And the player will only do that if the experience during the onboarding phase and if the things they can buy are actually worth it. So there's a lot of human understanding that goes into that phase of the game. And so I remember it very, very clearly. I remember giving a talk at a conference called Free to Play in London, Free to Play Summit. And quite a few of those studios who told me years before, get off my lawn, just to get out of my studio. They were like, can I give you my card? Could you come back and talk to us about that thing?
I hear you.
But about those humans coming and playing the game and polishing the design and understanding the issues. So a lot of those people got bitten really badly. They thought they were expert designers, that they knew how games worked. And you know what? It turns out they knew pretty much, they knew not enough. They did not know enough about game design. So maybe this will lead us into naturally talking about feedback loops. Imagine you're working on a AAA title and you spend, let's say, even 3 to 5 years making that game. And your feedback loop might be something like the sales figure. How much did you sell? Well, we sold 1 million copies or 2 million copies. Your only feedback loop is how did it sell and game reviews. So you're getting feedback on your game design once every few years. Now, if I was a game designer, I would be horrified at the thought of getting feedback to improve my ability. As someone who likes getting better and better, who enjoys the feedback loop, that would not sit well with me personally. So with free to play or play testing, I would want feedback as regular as I could afford to do it. That's and so mobile games obviously are arguably quicker to make, quicker to get feedback. So a lot of things really help. The cycles were shorter. They put more focus on the human, the players, to come in and understand them better, because a lot of their money now came from human understanding. Why would someone buy this? Why is our day one figure so low? So anyway, that's the luck side of starting a company, right? Yeah. If I was starting it in 2020, would it still work? I don't know. I think I would do it remote now. I wouldn't build a lab, obviously. I think it would be remote if I was starting a company in 2020. I would encourage your students to start remote research companies, perhaps.
Yeah, sounds good actually. Yeah, no, that's a very interesting story. And I mean, you worked on so many projects. Is there any? You don't have to name it, but is there one which was particular important for your career? Like in terms of, I don't know, learning, in terms of, I don't know, starting, in terms of finding some interesting new paths?
Yeah, I do have a favorite one actually. Obviously I can't name it, but I can just outline. It was we were hired to go and understand a very particular type of user. And I can't say what type they were, but just to say they were very specific. So me and a colleague of player research had to fly around the world and interview one-on-one these very particular, types of people to understand them better. Because if you want to understand someone, obviously, the best way is to be there. There's no substitute. And so we went to North America and Canada and bits of Europe to try and understand, why do these people do what they do? Then we had to come back and make sense of this project, and it's very rare that somebody hires you to do that. It's like a very slow and expensive form of research. It's almost like getting back to academia, right? It's slow and expensive research. Whereas the game industry is like fast and cheap a lot of the time. So I think that project always stands with me, firstly from the quality of the insights that we got, by taking the time and being able to dig deep. So you started off at the start of this lecture about analytics. And as you know, we had a chat recently about analytics, and I don't want to say negative, because they have their place, obviously. But my passion is the qualitative side. It's understanding, but why? Why does someone do that? And the what is good too. You need them both, obviously. But I just think my personal passion is always understanding why is that. What. So that's why it was a good project for me. But we worked on many games a year. I don't know, 60, 70, whatever it was, and that's probably more now.
Wow, that's a lot of games.
Yeah, and we worked on AAA stuff, down to indie developers of 1 or 2 people in some cases. Even down to an individual in some cases, I can remember. So it was the full spectrum, and that's why I didn't at the time go and work for a studio, doing games user research in-house. Because for me personally, if I went to work for a studio, I would just work on their games. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I was more passionate about understanding how everybody made games. Are the struggles of an indie developer the same as a AAA? Are they making the same mistakes? Are console developers making the same mistakes as free-to-play developers or VR developers?
Speaking of indies, so those are the things that. Do you have particulars like things you found out about indies? Because obviously many of the also here the students will start as indie developers eventually. Huh.
Wow, there's a question. The first answer I think I was going to say is I think a lot of the problems are common. So a lot of the mistakes that AAA developers have are in many ways similar to indie developers. I'm trying to think, is there anything specific to indies that, apart from the obvious things they already know, like they don't have access to expertise or unlimited resources that the AAAs often have. But in the flip side, the indies have more autonomy, right? They've got more freedom to make the game they want. And so the reason why you see people leaving AAA is, well, they don't get to make the game they want. They have to make the game somebody higher up wants.
And you can make changes happen so much faster.
Exactly. So I think that's one important thing for your students is, I think before you go out and get a job, you need to understand yourself. So I spend probably a lot of time thinking about what makes me happy. And I tend to do the things that are aligned with that. What do I think I can make a difference at? And if I don't think I can make a difference, there's lots of things I do not think about. So there's probably lots of questions you could ask me, or your students will ask me, and I'll probably say I have no idea, because I probably don't think about those things. I think about arguably quite a narrow set of questions, but I try and go all in on those narrow set of questions, because they're the things I think I can make a difference at. So bringing it back to, when I started my company, your students need to think how do they work? Do they work well as a team, as an individual? Do they, do they have burning passion to bring this game idea to life? Yeah. Or do they want to go and get experience of a larger studio or a mid-sized studio? I think that's important for them, Yeah.
Absolutely. We have also some very specific questions already in Discord.
Okay, go ahead. I can't read those, so I'll take some tea while you talk.
Yes. So, really about the methods. So you talked a lot about the experience of the player, and one of the questions is actually, how would you measure a specific sort of experience? How would you measure, for instance, enthusiasm, happiness, boredom, and so on, like all the different aspects. So in general, how would you measure those? And what would you measure?
There's lots of things in there. I'll be quite broad because there's lots of stuff in there. I'll say, broadly speaking, there are 2 main methods that a lot of game user researchers would use to measure those things. And when I say game user researchers, I should say I'm talking about qualitative. So not data, not analytics. You're right, that is a part of game user research, but for today's purposes, when it comes to qualitative stuff, like how happy is someone, or are they enjoying the game? So the 2 ones, one is, let's say, call it usability testing. And we'll describe that as, is the player able to do what you need them to do? And the other one is the one they were asking about, let's say user experience testing, which is, does the player like what I made? So just to repeat, the usability testing is, can the player do the thing? Can they do what I need them to do? And the UX testing is, do they like that thing? And they're very, very separate methods in most cases. So that's important for the students, because most of the clients who came to us in my last company, they would usually start off by saying, could you measure how fun my game is, or something like that? Could you measure if people enjoy the game, or can you tell if people like this idea? Something like that. And my general feedback to the game studios at that point was, well, yes, we can, but normally we need to do a first test to measure, do they know how your game works? And so the reason was, if we just brought players into a room and got them to play this unreleased video game, and say we give them a survey that asks a series of questions about how they, like the art of the characters or the difficulty, anything subjective, any of that stuff, right? If the player didn't know how the game worked, if they didn't know the rules of the game, or if they felt the controls clumsy, or if they were missing feedback cues, for example, that would impact their ratings on the game. So they would experience the game to a lesser degree. I don't know how it works. I can't use the controls. I don't know if I did that thing successfully. Therefore, I'm not enjoying this game. So before you assess the fun aspects of a game, I don't like the word fun, by the way, but let's use it today. So before you measure the fun aspects of a game, we need to do a preliminary test. It says, let's understand, is your game usable? Have you taught the player well? Do they know how the controls work? Are they picking up on the feedback cues that they've done something correct, or they need to improve? Then, when we know all those things, these players, they can use the controls effectively. They're getting the feedback and they're observing the feedback. They know what all the things mean. There's nothing confusing like terminology. Now we're ready to assess, the fun aspects. That way, if you do it in that order, if the results come back saying, no, the players are not enjoying your game, you can rule out that it wasn't a usability problem, or an onboarding problem, or a feedback problem, or a user flow problem. This was your game idea that sucks. You need to fix some aspect of the game design, which could be lots of things, obviously. So that's the two methods the students need to be really concrete about. Do you need a usability test? And you should be doing that first. And you do that, maybe that's done with one player at a time, usually. So you bring one player in, you would observe their behavior, you make some notes on what they do or do not do. A quick aside, data might be able to help you here, analytics. So you would do that, but it's mostly human observation. You're observing them and taking notes. And then you interview the player. So you would ask them questions about, why did they do what they did? Why did they not do certain things you think they should have done? And the reason you do that is to get the answer why. Why did they do this thing that was unusual? If you saw the player do something completely unexpected, there's a reason for that. And the job of the interview is to interrogate in a subtle way, what was it about the game's design that led this player to do something unusual? Because that's how you're going to improve as a designer. You're going to understand why it happened and then redesign it to hopefully fix that. So once you get rid of all those, usability issues, the UX test is done with a lot more people, typically 30, in some cases 40 or more people. And that's done in parallel. So instead of one player at a time and observing one-on-one, the UX play test is basically like a LAN party, more or less. You get them into a room, you're not really observing them, although you could, but it's not the point. They play the game in parallel, and then you give them a survey, which assesses subjective measures. Did you like the characters? How did you relate to the story? Was the game too difficult for you? Did you have a favorite weapon or vehicles? Or what do you think of the art? Or any number of subjective criteria that can impact on a game's engagement or fun. I see questions in the channel here. I'm trying to.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up question already from my side. Like you mentioned, 30, 40 players. Does those numbers, how many players or testers you would need for the specific phases? Does this depend on the size of your game? Like, does it make a difference if it's a 80-hour game or if it's a 30-minute mobile game?
Yeah, you're right. That's the long game is trickier, right? If you've got a live operations game or a
Like I really don't encourage anyone in the chat making an indie 80-hour game, please. No open world. We've been there. No.
Yeah, don't do that for your project. I can't recommend that.
I mean, you get bonus points if you make it. No, don't do that.
So it'll be done in phases typically. That's imagine you are making that game, So let's say it is a game that's going to live for, 100 hours of gameplay or something. One thing is, so for a lot of those games, say the first 10 hours is where most of the uniqueness is, and then the other 90 hours is simply progression, let's say. Yep. I'm generalizing here, but you get the idea. So you could split it up and say, well, let's focus on the onboarding. Let's say the first 10 hours where they get to understand how the map works, so the navigation or the leveling up system or the point system. Let's make sure they understand all that stuff. And yes, we could bring people back, or you could do a combination of in lab, bring them back for say 1 day for 5 days in a row. Yep. Then you could switch to, so another method is diary studies where they play at home and they fill out a diary every day. So you could do that for another 30 days. That's up to you. At that point, you could be using analytics as well. So bring them into lab to understand the whys, maybe observational stuff, and then release them into the wild to do analytics. There's all sorts of combinations that are possible if you're making those complex games. But for a lot of the work that we did, like mobile titles and things like that, you could bring people in just to assess the onboarding, mostly because the onboarding was so important. Most of your drop-off is at that point. So understanding day 1, day 3, or day 7 even is fine. It's where you think the novelty is. Where's most of the complexity in your systems? Mm-hmm. If it's in the first 5 or 6 sessions of the game, then let's focus on that. Mm-hmm. I mean, despite being an ex-academic, I'm also a very practical person. So things have to work. So your resources are limited. Even the biggest companies have limited resources. Time and money is not really infinite. Yep. So you have to decide, what should I focus on to give my game the best chances? Is assessing 30 hours in the most important thing I can do? Mm-hmm. But if you genuinely think it is, fine, go and research that. But if you can get away with the first 5 hours, 10 hours, then focus on that. Mm-hmm. I do think a lot of studios focus on things which are not important at all. In other words, there's usually something much more important to the player experience they could be doing, but instead they focus on things which they think are interesting, especially programmers, should I say.
I hear so many small notes towards programmers and towards data analytic persons.
I am a fan of everything. Whatever, just genuine. Whatever makes the game better. I am definitely for it. But I do think a lot of studios are poor at just understanding what is the most important thing for the player and not for me. Yeah. If you truly were a player-driven company, if you're genuinely making this game for the player, I think the true value of play testing is you get to understand what the player cares about and not what the dev team cares about. Yeah. Whenever we give reports to companies, I think one of the things I would hear a lot is, we know this already. You've given us. Yes, of course. We talked about this a few weeks ago. We knew these things. And I'd say, well, why didn't you fix them? It's because you were fixing something else. And we've reprioritized this list according to the player, not according to your dev team. Yeah. And it took a while for a lot of dev teams to realize that the reprioritization is just as important as the discovery of a new issue they didn't know about. So that focus on, if you're really player driven, this play testing is the play. It's integral to the player driven mindset. Right? Mm-hmm.
So I already have a lot of follow-up questions, but there are some things in the chat already. Should we?
Is there a specific game that you would describe as a shining example for diligent play testing resulting in financial success and long-lasting player engagement? Oh. It's well, which $1 billion franchise do we choose? I mean, it depends what you mean. So playtesting by humans, it's hard to say. I don't know the practices of all the studios. I mean, the first one that's sprang to mind was probably King and Candy Crush. It depends what you mean by, if it's a focus on iteration and responding to player feedback in any of its forms. Any of the billion-dollar franchises are obviously doing well. Let's say that. Any of the Supercell games. I think Supercell are, in some ways, are interesting, and in some ways, I want to criticize it. So let's say Supercell are doing well because they've got a series of billion-dollar franchises. So they iterate, they have metrics, they exceptionally high standards. But the reason I was going to criticize it is they don't talk a lot about human playtesting, like playtesting with real players. And I have been in talks where people from Supercell have been speaking, and they did mention playtesting, but they didn't. I was so many people, asking them questions. They didn't see my hand asking for the specifics about how players are involved. But I really wanted to know. But it does seem that they are involving, humans in addition to their other methods. By the way, if anybody hasn't saw it, the founder of Supercell put out a blog post this week or last week on the 10 principles that they have learned over the last 10 years. That is a must read for any aspiring game developer, I would say.
Oh, wow. I haven't read that one myself. So
if you just Google 10 lessons from 10 years, Supercell, you'll find it. But what I find most interesting about it is a lot of that talk was about culture. In other words, it's how you work as a team. That's what they put a lot of effort on. It's the formation of the team and how they work together as a unit that they're greatly attributing to their success. It's not necessarily just let's get a bunch of smart people and hope that a brilliant idea pops out. That's not likely to lead you to buying a super yacht anytime soon. It could do though, but it's unlikely. So, sorry, you had more questions. I'm going off on a tangent.
No, there's another question in the chat about re-onboarding. Very difficult topic.
I would love someone to fix that. I started Hitman about a month ago, and then on Saturday night I thought I'd go back and play it again, and I feared I couldn't go back in because I'd forgotten all the controls.
Yeah.
I was like, by the time it takes me to go back in and relearn the game, I may as well just do something else. So I made I put a thing on Twitter a few weeks ago saying I wish there was voice activation, voice recognition on tutorials, so I could just speak to it and ask questions, and it would just tell me what I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why do I have to? It's like you get a tutorial once, and for a lot of games you never see it again. It's like why do they think I'm going to play this game in one sitting? And arguably it's because that's how the dev team plays it, and that's how play testing is done. We're going to play it, you're going to play the whole thing, we'll get the results. So I think, again, back to almost research methods, if you were an ethnographer, so if you weren't coming from any of the traditional fields of user research, but if you came from an ethnography background and you studied how people actually live in their environment with a game, you would realize that re-onboarding is a significant problem. And people often talk about who your audience is, and as people get older and they get married or have kids or they have different things that interrupt their lives, we don't play games in one setting. We have jobs, we have stuff to do, and the refamiliarization, the relearning is just as important as the learning phase. So I see that as a really interesting research area and a really interesting almost business area as well. If you want to improve, day 1, day 3, day 7, a lot of these companies measure those things, but what if I play day 1, but I'm busy because I'm traveling for a month and I want to come back? So from the metrics, it'll look like I've gone, but I haven't gone. I was just busy. I want to come back on day 40, but there's a barrier there. There's a life barrier. So who's solving that?
Yeah, I hate that. Like, I'm one of those persons who always need to accomplish all the achievements. Like, I need to have always like the 100%, and then like I still know exactly at GTA 4 I was missing X monster stunts. And I will come back eventually when I know again how to play the game.
It's such a problem. There are so many games in my Steam library or, on the PlayStation, whatever.
Yeah.
I really want to go back, as you say, I want to go back and play them because I knew I had fun there, but that barrier is just too great. Sorry, go on.
Just let me very quickly. Your voice is perfect. I'm just missing, like, the connection seems to be a little bit wacky right now. Just let me quickly see if I can fix something here.
I'll talk quickly about that shiny example.
Yeah,
one of my
absolutely.
favorite examples of games that I think I'll give two actually. They're old examples, but I keep talking about them. They're examples of onboarding as a shiny example of playtesting, I guess. One was Plants vs. Zombies, the first one, so the very, very original. I think when you look at that tutorial and that onboarding, it is absolutely wonderful. I think there's very, very little, if anything, that does wrong. I know people over the years have suggested one or two, and I have also suggested one. I'm not going to say what it is. But the original PVZ was wonderful. The other example that I gave a talk on was the original Angry Birds. So Angry Birds from 2010, 2011, whatever it was. When you look at those initial levels, they were really, really well designed. Not only in terms of onboarding the player, but in terms of delighting the user as well. There's things that happen, even if I'll not spoil it for you if you want to go back and play it. But if you miss or nearly miss, that game does things in the design. It just gives delight in the player. And you can see that they've studied that if this player misses, we'll not just say, you missed, whatever. We'll do something that just is a surprise. And I think many games miss that. They just they focus on, these are our mechanics, we'll teach these mechanics. And they've forgotten that games can be fun. They're meant to be fun. Even learning can be fun.
Very, very important point you just mentioned. So Graham is like seriously one of the best speakers from my perspective. He had, like, all the talks he gave. You're like, they're full of information and you're talking about so many important things. Is there a site where we can look at your talks? Is there like a collection of your talks somewhere? How can we find your wisdom?
There's not. I think I'm very bad at that. There's quite a few talks, including that PVZ talk and Angry Birds talk where I dissected the tutorials. I gave them once and never again. So there's so many talks where it was like, I just did it once and I just moved on, and I'm not very good at repeating talks. So I do it once and then there's always something else to talk about in user research. So I did many times think about doing a website and I'll put all my stuff in one place. And you know what? I just can't get motivated to do it. I'm not interested enough. If you go on YouTube, you'll find some talks, I guess. If you go on gameindustry.biz, there's a series of articles there I wrote for a while. I also wrote for the Edge website for a few years, but the Edge website is now gone into a black hole of the internet. It's gone. So I wrote like 30 articles for Edge over a few years, but they're all disappeared into the /dev/null for any Unix nerds.
Everyone, we're back. Discord just, played a prank on us, I guess. But we are back. Okay, good. We had oh yes, thank you, Sebastian. We just made a proper break that everyone can follow Graham on Twitter. Okay. Yeah,
I do tweet out random things on game user research. If I've tweeted something out, it's usually because I've been speaking to a developer who have a problem. And so whenever I try to help a developer, if it's a problem for them, it's probably a problem for someone else. So I sometimes write it up and tweet it out with them.
Yeah, I can really recommend following Graham on Twitter. Quality content. Yeah, not all about cat pictures and stuff. Okay. Sorry, I just lost a little bit the line. I mean,
we have it.
We have a super important question, like general. Like, we talked so much about like your story and the This is not tea anymore, is it?
I've switched to water.
Okay. It did not really look like water.
I see. Irish water, yes.
Irish water. Okay. So we heard a little bit about your story, and but where are you now? What are you working on now? What is Graham McAllister doing now?
It's funny. I really struggle to describe what I do. I help. See, I'm struggling already. Broadly speaking, when I left Player Research about a year and a bit ago, I made a list of all the problems I thought were in the games industry. And there's quite a long list of problems, to be honest. And then I made a list of things that I thought I could help with. So, of all these problems, which ones, first of all, did I think I could make a small contribution to? And then what's the most important ones to fix? And so I started working on this one, which was about, do game developers know what they're making? Mm-hmm. Do you have a clear vision? It sounds really obvious. If I asked you, do you know what you're doing? People usually say, yes, I know what I'm doing. But when I was in Player Research, whenever I worked with a game studio, and I spoke to between 300 and 400 game studios a year, so I was speaking to a lot of studios, I always asked two important questions. What game are you making and who is it for? Mm-hmm. And that was just logistics, right? I ran a play testing company. We had to bring players in. So I just needed to know, well, what game are you making? And who's it for? Because I need to match these two things up. But I realized two things. Studios are very bad at understanding who their game is for, and they're very bad at describing the game they're making. And that surprised me. And so I thought I would try and partially fix that problem. So that's what I do these days is I designed a system which is kind of structures a team that puts your brain through a process, if you like. And it starts from the one-line description of your game. I'm making a game about tap dancing penguins. If there's any Kurt Vonnegut fans out there. So I'm making a game about that. And then it decomposes it into, through game design. That's a game design language. And so when you get through that process, then we can compare results. Now are we all making the same game? So that's one thing that I do. And I spend most of my days thinking about that, which means I drink tea, I do a little bit of thinking, I do a little bit of reading. But the other thing I do is still games user research. So I help about 5 to 10 game studios in different places around the world. I help them with anything to do with game user research. That could be, hey, awareness. What could we be doing? We're not even aware of what we don't know what we don't know. So tell us that. It could be UX training. Could you help us think like a UX, a user research person? It could be, could you teach us to do it ourselves? Which is, by the way, when I said a game user research lab had a finite lifespan, one reason was because I thought software tools would come in to replace that, so remote research. The other reason why I thought it would be replaced is because I think nearly every studio should be doing it sort of themselves anyway. So give them the knowledge. Could I design tools to empower a games user research studio? So that's a lot of what I do is, look, do it yourself. And I know it may not be quite as good as a fully trained professional, but I do think it could be good enough. Mm-hmm. That would get you, it's good enough for your needs. So I do those sorts of things. So half of my time is spent, maybe less than that. A small fraction of my time is spent, helping studios arm them with the tools about UX thinking and UX processes. And then the rest of my time is drinking tea and trying to come up with a process that I think could help, in a small way, change the game industry.
So if I summarize, you will basically found a company which is called Developer Research as the next step.
You know what? That's a very good way of thinking it, because all my everything I think about is applying UX research to the team.
Yeah.
So my last company applied UX research to the product. That's applying UX processes to the game, to the product, to make it better. Everything I think about today is let's make the team better. Yeah, and in turn, they will make the game better.
This is a really, really cool perspective, like looking at it through the other lenses. Really good.
But maybe I've been drinking too much tea. Maybe it won't be useful. Which could be true, by the way. This could be terrible. And I am fully okay. If this idea turns out to be terrible, that is just fine. I am okay with this being a failure.
I think this is one of the most important findings, the takeaways. That also if you fail, you always learn and hopefully take away something.
I spent the year researching into what makes a game studio fail or succeed. It's back to that question one of your students asked about, are there any shining examples of processes and things like that? Those studios are out there, but even the best ones, even if we do point to Supercell or things like that, there's still things I think they could be doing better, which is exciting for me because I think, is there potential out there to not only do as well as those best examples, but surpass them? The answer is probably yes, because they have some processes down and they're very good at studio culture, but arguably maybe they're weak at the human side. Maybe if they were to do more human play testing, they could even, they could come up with some other ideas. One thing we haven't talked about, for example, is co-design. So as far as I know, Supercell come up with their ideas they have small teams and they love the vision and they make that vision, so they go and do that. But there are many examples out there of game design ideas that have come from the players. Some like the Talos principle is one famous example. The crew team have talked about how that was not the original vision of the game. Far Cry 3 was another example. We're just taking tower after tower. It was not the original vision for the game. That was the players like doing that. So as far as I'm aware, there's only a few game designers who actually promote co-design. That means bringing the players in, not to evaluate the game, but to get the idea from them, to sit with the designer. And the two designers I know who have actively mentioned this are Will Wright and Sid Meier. Arguably the two best game designers.
But I mean, Will Wright, he's basically just making tools. Like that's what he's mentioning all the time. Like creating a game like Sims. He always wanted to create a tool or a toy, and players can fool around with it. This is such a different perspective on game design. I love that.
I never mentioned this, but when I left my programming job as a network programmer and I'm back to academia, I knew I wanted a more creative job. But a friend of mine worked at Rockstar at the time, and he wanted me to take a job interview in Rockstar. I didn't go in the end. I didn't even take the interview. I went back to academia. But I think if I was a programmer in the game industry, I would be a tools programmer. Some people want to be programmers for the engine or for shaders or for systems. But I'm pretty certain I'd be a tools programmer, helping the team to make what they want. Yeah, that's the thing that excites me the most in terms of programming.
Oh, cool. Oh, this is such a lovely take on it. The topic you just tackled, that also co-designing with the player and always involving the player. Like I'm a huge fan of that. But like especially me doing a lot of data science and trying to bring this thought forward also with data collection and so on. I get a lot of this controversial discussions as well. Like, this is art, like the game designer wants to put a specific vision out there, and if the player does not understand the vision, then it's basically their fault. Like, what is your take on that? What's your response on those things?
Here we go.
I hear that a lot, so
I have a long list of controversial statements about I really do, about the game industry. Let's start with this one then. So I do not think games are art. So why would I say that? First of all, I don't want to get into an argument about definition, because what it comes down to really is how you define art. And so that's what people end up arguing about, So what I would say is that I prefer the word creativity. And why I would say that is one of the definitions of art, at least what I would, prescribe to, is art is when you're doing it for yourself. So if I want to make an indie game today for me, if I just want to make a game because I want to make that game and I'm not interested in paying my mortgage or paying your mortgage or the mortgage of 300 people who work for me, then that's fine. That's art. I just want to make the thing, and I will do that. But if you're interested in design, then you're making a game for someone else, and you have to think like that. That is what design is. Yep. If you look at the design process, stage 1 of design is understand people, and then stage 2 of design is make the thing for the people. Stage 3 of design is measure what you made and then go back to stage 1. Right? So that's the design cycle, and that's the game's business. So if you're interested in business, like making a commercial product, because you need it to succeed to make your next game, you need enough money, then that vision is closer to creativity, because that's design. So from my definition, at least, that's how I separate art from creativity. Mm-hmm. Art is, I just want to bring the thing to life, and it doesn't need to succeed. It's purely creative vision.
This is
so yeah,
this is great. This is gold.
But there's a lot of people on Twitter, very good friends, who, many of them say games are art, and maybe that's okay. If they put, let's look at it this way: where do you put the two things? Do you want to bring your vision to life, and that's more important to you, say, than making money? If you're a studio of one, maybe that's fine. You can make that decision. But let's say you employ someone, and the decisions you make directly affects their livelihood and their mental health and their, how they sleep at night. So if you put your art first, knowing that may hurt the commercial impact of the studio, then you're impacting other people who you employ. And that's a tough call, right? Mm-hmm. Because if your art works, awesome, everyone enjoys that vision. But most games will fail, right? That's a statistic. Yep. Most games will not achieve the return. So do you put the health of the whole studio above your individual art? That's something you should lay down as a rule, maybe when you start a studio, That'll be useful for everyone to know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure those rules are quite clear in a lot of studios. And I think they should be. No, that's culture. That's culture. Yeah.
This is very interesting. Thanks for sharing your thoughts here.
We have a long list of controversial things, But,
yeah.
Like I say, I come at it from the very practical angle. Yeah. I want everyone. Let me say this: I want everyone to succeed. That's always what I would be interested in. Mm. For example, even when I ran Player Research, the company I founded, I would put the health of the company above any one individual, including myself. So if I was making a decision about should we do X or Y, there's usually more than that, then I would definitely weigh up, is this better for the company as a whole, or is it better for one individual? And sometimes you do have to make decisions like that. So the company should succeed, right? That's the value. It's better if we all, if the unit does better than one individual. Other people may disagree, and that's fine, but that's just the way I thought about it.
The thing you said about design and creating for the users, there's this really fantastic book, The Design of Everyday Things. I just love this book. And
yeah, me too.
I would love to hear a little bit of your recommendations for first of all in that field, because the other questions later, but in general, are there any any books you find important to read, specifically in that field, or to get a little bit of insights here?
I do have a long list of books I could recommend. I'm just saying there is a long list of books, but I think it's more just important to read widely. Most of the books that have changed my life, there are some, come from outside of this specific field. I do think The Design of Everyday Things is a brilliant book, and I thoroughly recommend reading it. I also own very few physical books, but I've got a few beside me that I thought I might hold up. This one is called The Humane Interface by Jeff Raskin. I don't know if you've read it.
Okay.
Jeff Raskin was the owner of the Apple project, the original, the Mac Classic, before Steve Jobs came in and took ownership from him. So Jeff Raskin was, very much into user-centered design, interaction design, and many of the interface designs that are only popular in recent years, he was prototyping these back in the 70s and 80s. So things like, for example, when you start typing for, say, choose your country. If you start typing, United Kingdom, UNITE, and that box starts filling out and pre-filling with your country, it starts sorting as you go. He was the guy that was prototyping those ideas. We only started seeing those recently. So I do recommend The Humane Interface. if you're a research nerd, this is the research book I would recommend to most students. It's Research Methods by Lazar. If there is a newer version in this is quite an old version, but that's a genuinely quite a good read. And the last physical book I'll recommend, because a friend of mine, but it's also good, is Building User Research Teams by Steve Bromley. Even if you're not building a team, there's lots of practical advice in here about running research, note taking, doing usability reports, and it's very practical and things you can put into practice. So there's a lot. I read quite a lot, so I think I'm trying to think in terms of Jesse Schell's Book of Lenses. If you haven't read that, I'd recommend Jesse Schell, his book on game design.
Yeah, I think this is the Bible for game design.
Pretty much. I think a lot of people own it, but few have read it. So I actually recommend reading it.
Yeah. There's a card game too, and today I just heard there's an app. I didn't know that there's an app for this too, but yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also a similar app from Brian Eno. He also had a similar book of thoughts and things. So I think Brian Eno's app is also available to download, or used to.
I sort of like books.
all of mine are on my Kindle, so I can't. But everything I've been reading about for the last year has been about behavior change and how teams perform, what makes people fail or succeed, what's the culture, what are the good indicators of culture.
I mean, it's a lot of psychology, isn't it? Do you read a lot of papers there or books?
Yeah, it is. It's a mixture of things, how do people work together? It is all psychology, but there's also a lot of social psychology where this comes from. So the study of how teams work together, and then you get into arguments about reproducibility. Okay, it worked for these people. What about these people? Is that true? And you get into mindset research. The growth versus fixed. And but I would say that whenever I read the list of things that make a team fail, indicators of failure, I saw that a lot in game studios. A lot. I see too many studios making assumptions. I think they don't want to check that their assumptions are true. It's easier just to get on with it, and if we fail, we fail. I think they have the mindset that we'll do that later, but later is often too late. I think a lot of studios they fail the basic principles. Like Google did research, it's called Project Aristotle, about what makes a successful team. And so their number one principle, I think, was psychological safety.
Good. Surprise, everyone. We are back. That was a little bit of a different setup. Okay. So I'm not entirely sure where we stopped. I just see there is a question from Jacques in the Discord in the meantime. Grinding Gear Games seems like a company that has figured out a pretty good method for testing and refining their content. What's your opinion on them?
Who are they?
Grinding Gear Games. Grinding Gear Games made, for instance... Oh, yeah. Path of Exile, is it? Yes.
What did they make?
Path of Exile.
So what's their method? Why does he think it's so good?
Shaka is still with us, yes. Well, what's the method? Okay, I'm pretty sure Shaka is writing in the meantime. Should we, in the meantime, go a little bit on with different questions?
Yeah, sure. I remember we were talking about books briefly.
Books, yes.
So, I mean, there's loads of different things. There's even, there's lots of UX specific topics. So if you're interested in, for example, tools programming, if you're making interested, there is a book just on UX for tools. So if that's something that interests you, you could do that. If it's UX for games, there's, we held up a few already. That would tell you about the methods for those. So it depends what you're interested in. There's another book I would recommend called Glued to Games, which talks about self-determination theory. So motivation, why do players do what they do? So if you're interested in game design aspects, how can I design my game to keep players in the game longer, keep them more engaged? Glued to Games by Scott Rigby is the book you want to read.
I would love to take the opportunity to change the topic, sort of. I would still love to talk about books, but I would love to talk about books on a personal level. Like, tell us a little bit, if you want to, obviously, but I would be so interested to hear a little bit about your personal recommendations. What are you reading in your spare time, like outside of the UX world and player research world? And
well, it's a fine line. I think most of the books I read are related to science or ideas or things that affect popular science. I'm just interested in ideas. The books don't even have to be that good. I'm just interested in the idea. So, for example, most of the things I read in my spare time are about either business or science themed. So I think you know this already. I'm also a fan of Tim Ferriss. So one of the books that changed my thinking / life is the 4-Hour Workweek. It's not just because I want to work 4 hours a week, which is a fine goal, I guess. But I think if you think like that, how could I work 4 hours a week? It's useful for aligning your thinking. Yeah. I think one of the things I'm interested in generally is systemization, like the efficiency and optimization of how people work. I don't think people have to work 40 hours a week, for example. Yeah. When I think of how efficient or effective I am, I could have an idea in 5 or 10 minutes that, that maybe that's all I need to do that week because it's enough, So this idea that you should be, you need to put the time in. I'm not convinced that's the best argument, let's say. So the 4-Hour Workweek is one of those books that says, yep, if you start thinking like this, you may reveal other thoughts, other ways of working. I also think that's true in game studios. I think some things do need time. If you're creating art does take time. That is true. But I also see a lot of waste. And I'm not saying games companies need to go to 4 hours a week. But I do think they should think about where is their time wasted. Why are they not efficient? Why did it take so long to make this game? I think if they spent more time analyzing that, then that could be useful for them. Another book that changed my thinking is the E-Myth. E stands for entrepreneur. And I think if you want to start a company, that's a must read. Because if you're an entrepreneur in anything, you're usually passionate about the idea. Like when I started player research, obviously I'm passionate about player research, user research. But it's not enough. That's not enough to make a great company. You also need to focus on the company. And so part of your brain needs to make the thing better, the research, but also you need to make the company better. It has to be more efficient. And that book is instrumental in thinking like that as well. So we're working in the company and on the company. So if any of your students want to start a games company, they need to separate that. You need to make a great game, but you need to make a great games company. And they are not the same thing. So that'll help them, I think, separate those two ideas.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think this is something like what we share like this. Like I'm super, super interested in everything around productivity and trying to, just make most of my day. So this is something what I would be really interested to hear from your perspective. Like, how do you structure your day? What techniques do you use? What methods, what tools help you by that?
I might disappoint you. I have abandoned at the minute all forms of structure.
What?
And I knew you would say that. I used to. I would say maybe even a few months ago, I used to get up in the morning and I would write for a few hours. So I would read or I would write. But honestly, and I probably will go back to that. I'm going through a phase of being a bit unstructured, and I haven't been so productive recently. Mostly because, actually, I don't know why. I just haven't. Maybe I'm taking a break. So I was making this thing for a year, and Johanna, I think you know a bit about that. So I spent a year making this series of templates for game studios, and I'm just on a natural taking a breath. So my working week at the minute, it's a very small W. There's not much working going on. I spend a lot of time just relaxing and pursuing creative interests. Mostly reading. I spent today, for example, on the balcony
Oh, good.
in the sun, and I was reading a few chapters of a book.
Wait, in sun?
Yeah,
Great.
it's good weather here at the minute. Not as good as Europe, maybe, or Central Europe, but yes, we had some sunshine today, so I was. So I think you would call this a sabbatical. I'm taking a sabbatical.
Oh, that's
right?
good. Yeah.
So,
think, read,
yes,
restructure a little bit.
I'm taking the time to think, am I still focusing on the most important problem?
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to always go forward and just keep yourself busy. And anyone can do this. You can do this as a student. You can do this in your job or in your life. And so it's one of the things I think it's mentioned in the 4-Hour Workweek, or at least one of those books around that time I was reading, that why do people wait till retirement, to take retirement? And you should take it maybe at different points in your life. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so one of the reasons why I left my company, firstly, I was acquired. I didn't explain that, but I didn't just leave. So I sold the company. So I'm in a fortunate position, I guess. But I decided I would take a sabbatical, if you like, a life sabbatical, to go back and think about what am I passionate about now. Mm-hmm. Player research was born because I had unbelievable drive and motivation to bring that thing to life. Like I said, when I thought, I am going to do this, and there was absolutely no question I was going to bring that thing to life. So I wanted to take a break and just say, well, what is the current passion? And I think it is this thing I created over the last year. I think that's the thing I'm going to bring to life. But there was a period when I was going to bury it. I was going to put it in the bin, and nobody would ever see it. Maybe a handful of studios would have saw it. But I think I'm going to see it through, because I still think there's value in getting the idea out there. I still think it would help a lot of developers.
Absolutely.
And so even if it's not perfect, that's the other thing that's important to say, I think a lot of people say, back to this question you asked, art, about art and creativity. I think it's important to feel okay if something isn't perfect. But it has to be good enough, and understanding that sweet spot that I have made a thing, and that thing could be a game, it could be a lecture, it could be a concept or a thought. Mm-hmm. In my case, it's a design tool that I made. Is it perfect? No, it's probably not perfect. Is it good enough? I think it might be, because it's creating value in teams. So yeah, that is my current. The reason why I'm taking the lack of structure is to create space to think about what is important in my life. What's the thing that I want to? I don't want to spend time on the wrong thing, because that's really easy to do.
It is absolutely not the answer I would have expected now. But it's a very good answer. It's also a very important takeaway that, like, I think you need those really productive phases, and then you need to just sit back and try to think again, and try to revise a little bit and restructure. Yeah, no, that's important. Like, I think so. I think he calls it mini retirements or something like that.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. So I'm on a mini retirement.
Yeah, that's
where I just think about, am I still working on? And by the way, as I say, the answer is yes. I still think I'm working on the most important problem. Mm-hmm. And that's not just me saying that. That when I looked into all the evidence, so I mentioned to you in the past, there's a project called the Game Outcomes Project by Paul Tazur and his team, and they looked into what makes a successful game studio. So what makes a game team succeed or fail, and it's on Gamma Sutra. You can Google it. But they ended up with a list of 40 recommendations. Statistical correlation. What are the most correlating factors? And number one on the list was a clear vision. Mm. So if you're going to focus on anything, you should have a clear vision for your team. So by the way, there's other evidence for that. I looked into, NASA did research internally, Google did research internally, Gallup did research. There's lots of these research projects that I looked at to try and figure out, is this problem I'm trying to solve, is it worth spending a few years of my life on? And the evidence still seems to suggest, yes, this is a problem in games and outside of games. Yeah. And you would even argue people have this in their life. What are you doing with your life? Not you personally, Johanna, but but whatever you decide to do with your life, is this the most fulfilling thing that if you take away money or external pressure, what would you be doing right now? Would you be listening to me and you talking about game design on a I don't know, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. These are big philosophical questions, but anyway.
No, but this is crucial. This is so important. Like, I started to do this. Like, I used to do this like every year, like once a year, like this sort of like at the end of the year revision thing. But I actually started to do this every 3 months. So because you sort of like, I broke down my year into smaller bits, and if I constantly revise that, I can sort of still see whether or not I'm closer to my vision and if I'm making progress, and especially that I don't forget my vision.
And how do you measure?
Hey,
you don't need to reveal.
How do I measure? That's a good question. But for instance, like I have specific small goals. Like for instance, I have writing goals. I have or a specific project I want to work on, and in specific fields, and for every specific field or major goal, I added specific tasks which take me closer to this goal. And every month or every like 3 months, I would like to work on one of those specific sub goals. Let's put it that way. And so I have a very clear sort of like task list, and also whether or not how many tasks I have completed towards this specific goal.
Yeah, I think the feedback, the measuring is critical.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So you are asking a good question. Yeah.
I also kept. I don't carry a wallet anymore, but when I did, I kept in my wallet a bit of paper. It was a Post-it note.
You're not.
What's that?
You're not carrying a wallet?
Yeah, don't start. Anyway, when I did carry a wallet, I had a bit of paper, a Post-it note of 5 things on it, and they were very some personal goals, just personal to me. Some 2 of them are business goals. I think it was 3 personal and 2 business.
Oh yeah.
So the two business ones were, if I was to ever sell the company, how much would it need to be before I would even consider it? And this is long before I even considered that. I was reading a business book, and they said you should do this, so I did it. I put it on the note.
Okay.
And the other one was just turnover, because that helped me think about growth of the company and how many people would I need to hire, how many games would we need to work on. Mm-hmm. So one was like aspirational or bigger vision, like what would you sell and why would you sell? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just the amount, it was also why would you do that? Why would you consider that? Mm-hmm. And then one was like a measurable thing. What would the yearly revenue you wanted to hit?
Yeah.
And then 3 were, I'll not mention the 3 personal ones. They're just 3 things that were important to me that I thought would make me better, whatever better means, So, but anyway, I kept that in my wallet. I don't know if anyone else does this, but yeah.
But this is brilliant. Like I have never thought about this question. Like, how much would you like? How big of an offer does it require for you to sell the company? That's a good question to think about.
It's useful for all sorts of things, not just that, but it's things like what would a company have to offer me before I joined them?
Yeah.
Because there's some companies who I would consider quite evil, and I do ask myself the question. I'm not looking for a job, but if I were, what would that company have to say or offer before I would even remotely consider working for them?
Yeah.
And it also, you get really interesting answers, like, because I'll not go into it, but what sort of things would have to be on that list?
Yeah.
And it could be strange things. I'll not mention real examples, but it could be strange, like, I want you to completely change your ethical value system before I work for you.
Yep.
How about that?
Yeah.
That will make me work for you. Again, it goes uphill or downhill from there, depending on which way you look at it. But it's interesting. Why do you do what you do? What drives you? Mm-hmm. Why are you studying this course? Why are you making this game?
Yeah.
Why are you listening to me talking about sort of games user research, but sort of not?
Yeah.
I think you should know these things about yourself, or at least try to explore them.
Yeah, and also find out, is this really your the most important priority right now, or is it just like some distraction from the actual goal?
Yep.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Oh, the Twitch is hung again.
What?
Yeah, I've got a circle of death on my Twitch stream. It's back. Okay. Have the students asked any more questions? I'm sure I'm boring them with these.
Oh, Chuck answered the previous one.
Fine for me. That's good. What did Shark say? Or Shaq? Was it Shaq or Shark?
Shark. You've met him at the GameDev days.
Ah.
A lot of familiar faces, nicknames. I'm reading the Shark. That's the answer to the Path of Exile question from before. So they seem to test a lot and are not afraid of making mistakes, in my opinion. PoE, Path of Exile, started as a small indie game in the vein of Diablo 2 and is now the most complex action RPG out there. A lot of my friends played quite a lot, some for thousands of hours, and they were annoyed at some current expansions and tweaks, but never at how the game worked as whole for the last 5 to 6 years, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe it's community driven.
Yeah, I think
just to a certain extent,
Yeah.
So I think maybe that helps as well. Always listening to the. So here's another controversial statement, Norbert, because it's related.
Wait, well, I'll tweet.
Well, I was going to tweet this. In fact, you can't see my desk in front of me, but there's a series of tweets. I might tweet this in the next few days. But which division in your games company has the most influence over the player experience?
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about, is it user research, which are meant to be the voice of the player? Is it design? Is it the executives? Is it community management? Mm-hmm. Or is it marketing? Mm-hmm. So each of those 5 groups would arguably say they are the voice or have some input into the voice of the player. Mm-hmm. But my question is, okay, who has the most influence?
Yeah.
So here's the sort of controversial point. A lot of people would say, a lot of people in games user research either come from psychology or human-computer interaction or something like that. But I would maybe argue business or social science is more important for having the final say, because the cultural aspect of your studio can often overweigh what user research says. So you can have the voice of the community. We listen to our players. We've done testing on the game. And then an executive can just come in and say, nope, we're not doing that. This is what we're doing. And it overrides all the learning from. So this is interesting, because if you do that, well, why did you do all the user research? What was the point if you're going to override it anyway?
Yeah.
And by the way, there's many games you can point to where this has been done on, where the business seems to have overridden what the research would have told you was the logical thing to do to make a better game.
I've heard so many bad examples, but I've heard one good example where I think the delay at the game was actually delayed because they heard the voices of the game's user research team. I heard only one of those success stories, and everything else was like, yeah, if we need to ship and this is what business, marketing, and so on says, then it's gonna be shipped, no matter what.
Sorry, carry on.
No worries, go on.
No, I was going to say, I know for a fact, because I've met people who my last company worked for, and I have asked them, what did you think of the report? Because I knew we worked on their game. And many people within the studio said, like, what report? We've never seen it.
Oh.
And I knew that they were exactly the sort of person who should have been reading. So here you have a report, which is that person has they need to have read it, because they were the person who would have been required to make a change.
Yeah.
They've never heard of it. They didn't know research was going. Not only had they not read the report, they probably didn't even know research was being done in the game. So the political, the cultural aspects, I keep coming back to the social science aspects. How does the team function? How do these people work together as a unit? That, I would suspect, in many cases, especially the bigger studios, has a bigger impact on the outcome of the game and the player experience than the people actually, doing the research.
Yeah.
So I would love people to talk about that. No one talks about those things, Anyway, we're getting off topic, but these are the things I spend my time thinking about.
No, it's super important, and it's very frustrating sometimes, because if you put so much work into that they even hire you to make the work, and then they just don't care.
Yep. That's why, do I spend my time thinking about let's improve usability methods by 1%?
Yeah.
I do not spend my time thinking about those things, because even if you do that, It doesn't matter. It's not. They're good enough. Just carry on with what you're doing.
No.
There are other much more significant problems that you should be tackling if you genuinely want to make a good game. But they're not being tackled. They're hard to tackle is one thing.
No.
But sweeping them under the carpet is certainly not going to get anywhere. You know? So that's why I work on culture. That's why I was a user researcher.
Yeah.
So I was a computer scientist, then a user researcher, and now all my research is applying UX to teams.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because I think that has the potential to have the bigger impact than making user research better as a discipline by itself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but I would still love to hear a little bit about still about your processes. No, but in general, like for instance, the tools you use. Again, you're I just know also from Twitter. I just see you made a YouTube video series for no, we're going there. No, I'm not going there. Okay, but you're making so many different things. You're writing. You're working on all these projects. Like, what do you use for tools? What do you use for writing? What do you use for time management? Are there any other tools which just help you on a daily basis? Which
there's no
not excellent.
I have no time management. I have a lot of free time, let's say, so I don't worry about time anymore.
Okay.
So that's one thing. It's done when it's done. Okay. So I do have a few projects. So I'm trying to write 2 books, and I say try because I may or may not finish them, and I'm completely okay with that. So if they're not written, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. What I like about writing is it's thinking. The more I write, the more I think. Mm-hmm. So if a book comes out at the end, that's fine. If it doesn't come out, it's fine, because I really wanted the thinking. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just think through this problem. Okay. So that's one thing. I do a lot of typing into a computer, and as you know, I used to use Scrivener as my tool for writing, and I abandoned it because I moved from, can't believe I'm saying this, Mac to PC. I still have an iPad Pro, so I love the iPad Pro, but I want cross-platform. So all the tools I used to use that were platform specific, which was nearly everything, I now only use a tool if it's cross-platform. Yeah. Like cross-platform means iPhone, Android, and iPad, and PC, and Mac. So it has to work on everything.
You don't read or write on your iPhone, do you?
No. But a tool I use every day is Day One. So I'm a daily diary writer. I'm in my 19th year of writing every day. So that Day One is it's a tool I've used for the last 7 years.
So you're writing every day?
Every day for 19 years.
In the morning or in the evening?
It's mostly in the evening. Okay. But now I start, if I want to capture how I feel in the moment, I have to write it right then. Okay.
How much time, like per day, do you spend? How many minutes or how many do you think?
I maybe write about 400 words a day.
Okay, that's a lot. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, a lot happens. Even though it looks like nothing happens, you'd be amazed. A lot happens every day, even if you think nothing happens.
Yeah. I mean, I write too, but again, I'm not that much.
I think, again, I'm not retrospect. I don't go back and look at this. I very, very rarely go back and look at what I write.
So here's the thing. Like, just let me give you that. So I was so inspired because I did not write every day. But then I heard a podcast with Penn from Penn and Teller, Penn Gillette.
Penn Gillette?
Yes, yes. I'm a huge Magic fan. It's a little weird, I know. But again, he was in his interview, he was mentioning that he's also writing every day since 30 years or so. And what he does, and this was so inspiring. So he would read every day. He would read what happened 1 year before at this day, what happened 5 years before on that same day, and what happened 10 years before on that same day.
Yeah, I do that too. Sometimes.
Okay, yeah. And I think this like also what he mentioned, like, I made this terrible life choice already like 1 year ago. I shouldn't do this again this year. And I think this really helps you to grow.
I think it's useful, especially when making decisions when you don't know how things are go, or when you forget how uncertain things are. I remember starting my company, for example. So that's a really interesting period in my diary, from the end of 2011 to through all of 2012. There aren't many times, but I definitely know I've written down a few times where I thought, was I crazy to start a company?
Yeah.
It wasn't often, but I definitely know I've written that. And I sometimes revisit those days to see, why did I write that? What happened that led me to think, and what I do often realize is that whenever I had, let's say things went wrong, you didn't win a contract or whatever, stuff happens. The day after, in almost every occasion, was amazing. I mean, off the charts, fantastic. And what I realized what was happening, and whenever something didn't work out, I really doubled down harder on making something good happen. So I would try twice as hard to try something else, or contact someone else, so I realized that my good periods were very tightly joined to the bad periods, because in the bad periods I didn't just give up. I tried more, to correct this bad thing. So I always find it interesting that when I look back, which isn't often, but again, whenever I do it, the cycles are bad, really good. Bad, really good, and they are very tightly joined together.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Very, very, very. That's also very, very inspiring. I think this absolutely can help. Just as a side note, so I used to journal in a proper journal, like I still do the bullet journaling, but then I asked on Twitter, because this was also because of the Penn Gillette interview, because he mentioned that he struggled doing this journal thing because it takes so long with pen and paper, and he's much more consistent when doing it online or like digitally. And it was you giving me the hint for day one for the app. So this is a really good app, which I can also.
That's good.
Yeah, like Scrivener.
I may go back to Scrivener. I'll probably get a Mac again soon, I'm sure. But day one is the best I've found. When I started, the day I started, I think it was on paper, and I got my PhD. So I did the Viva, so the interview for your PhD, and I come back, and I wanted to capture how I felt about it, and I wrote down about 3 sentences. It was really short, and then I forgot about it for about 2 years. I just captured that moment. Oh no, it must have been a few months, because I started my diary in 2001. Anyway, so I wrote down this, and then there was a gap anyway. And then I started in Microsoft Word or something, or some simple note-taking thing. Then there was a program for the Mac called Mac Journal, and I used that. And then day one came along. So I had to migrate each time into these new apps. I hit migrating, So, but yeah, you can look back over your life, which is interesting.
It's a good app, yeah, and it's a good process.
Besides that, all my tools are cross-platform and usually free. No other reason that they just seem to be easy to access on all platforms. So note-taking is OneNote, Microsoft OneNote. I used to use Evernote, but then started to dislike it. So OneNote is fine. There's not much. I'm trying to think what's open in my... If I install a new computer, or if I get a new computer, what do I install on it?
Or on your mobile phone.
Yeah, very little. Like if on my front page, it's like the front page of my phone there's almost not. I don't know if you can see that. There's almost nothing on it.
It's really empty. Yeah.
Yeah. So Strava I use nearly every day. Twitter, Facebook, the weather, and then on the next page it's day one.
Strava. So you're doing a lot of sports. Do you? Is this?
No, just running. I run a lot, quite a lot. So.
How often do you go running, or
4 or 5 times a week, maybe? So I try and do two 10Ks a week and 2 5Ks at least, and then something else. So.
Okay.
I'm not very good, by the way. I just like it. Yeah.
Does this help you, like, to get ideas? Creative?
All ideas come from running. It's the source of running is the source of. I think every Edge article I wrote, or nearly every Edge article, came from running.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, a very, very high percentage. it's just, I find it very, very creative.
Yeah.
Instrumental. Yeah.
And
The other thing is podcast. I listen to podcasts when I run, so that's good for ideas too.
what podcast are you listening to?
I'm listening to Michael Lewis at the minute. So Michael Lewis is the guy, if you saw the film Moneyball or The Big Short, he's the guy that wrote the books behind those. So he's interested in a bit like my cultural research, how can a team of amateurs outperform a team of experts? So that, generally speaking, how do you get better? How do you get better at doing what you do? Through feedback, through optimization, through analysis. So I'm listening to his podcast at the minute.
Interesting. I gotta look into that one. I haven't listened to this one yet.
I recommend next time you're on your hike or skiing, you should try.
Yeah, no. While hiking and skiing, I usually don't listen to anything. But when running, I do. But hiking and skiing, this needs to have nothing.
I try not to get caught up with tools generally. I think recently you were asking about my day structure. I try to get away from the computer as much as possible. So I'm more likely to step back with a bit of pen and paper and just sit somewhere and think, what do I need to do? And then once I know what to do, I sit at the computer and do it. So if it's thinking or planning, I get away from the computer to think. But if it's doing, then I sit at the computer and do.
Okay. This is a good differentiation. I think this absolutely helps. I mean, do you have a notepad like for writing, or is it just sticky notes or random notes?
It's random. I have loads of bits of paper that I got from conferences over the years. And it's a massive amount. So I'm trying to use those up.
And pens, right?
And pens. Oh, you have no idea how many pens. But I also have the bigger iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil.
Oh, good, yeah.
And the app I use. Oh, here's an app I do thoroughly recommend. It's called Papers. By 53, I think it's by. And so I use Papers and Concepts, two separate apps. But I mostly stick to Papers these days. So all the book ideas I have, and I have a series of articles, things I may tweet out, and they're all planned in Papers. So I have a separate journal within Papers for these are things like book idea 1, book idea 2, tweets I may do, company ideas. I have a separate journal within Papers.
So again, what app are you using for that?
Papers.
Okay.
I think it's called by 53.
Okay, cool.
It may be iOS only, but it's pretty cool. But I realized to think I need to hold a pencil or pen. I think it's somehow better for me to sketch these things out. So
Yeah, I use Trello for those things, like just to capture all the ideas I want to keep over the next couple of years. Trello works really good for me for that.
I used to use things like that. I used to use Omni Outliner on the Mac, if you remember that. But what I realized was I never kept those tools up to date. So I kept migrating all my ideas from tool to tool, from Trello and out of Trello and into Outliner and into something else.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I use Google Tasks, I think it is. But I'm not allowed any more than about 5 things.
Yeah.
So if it's any more than 5, either just delete them, they're not important, or just start doing stuff.
Jacques is asking a fantastic question, which I was actually also really curious about. Do you meditate? Do you do something for your...
No,
No.
I don't, but I run. Running's as close as I get to meditation, I think.
Have you tried it, or...?
I haven't. I may have a little nap on the balcony every day, but that's just between us. Some might call that meditating.
Okay, officially you're meditating, but...
I'm not joking about that, but very often, like I'd go on a plane or something, and I sleep very quickly. I'm almost certainly asleep before takeoff on nearly every occasion. Yeah. But I would wake with an idea very, very frequently. And it's like, oh yeah, that's what I should do. So. This is clearly not meditating, but it is also very creative for me, where I would just let's call it sort of napping, but somehow the idea emerges very quickly, and I can't explain it. And I have also done this for a very, very long time. I have done this when I started trying to solve complicated computer programs. So when I was trying to say, like, try and write an algorithm for optimizing image analysis. I don't know, whatever I was working on, right? And I couldn't solve it. I was just stuck. I couldn't think of how to do it. Whenever I would go and lie down, and I did do this, very, very quickly it'd be like, oh yeah, that's how you solve it, you know, and I would get back up and solve this problem. That happened very, very commonly. Somehow, either the act of getting away from the computer or the act of just relaxing solve the problem.
I think you absolutely need to find something which fits your mind or your way of like working. Like for me, it's meditating. I meditate every day, like for 15 minutes or so, and it's training. So it took me a time to, and sometimes it worked better, and sometimes it. But I all of a sudden I'm so aware of my current state also, and what I'm sort of capable of that day, and helps a lot for me. It works. And
if you don't do it, what happens? If you don't meditate, how does it affect you?
Actually, I really can say after a couple of days, it doesn't like I don't notice anything after the first day, but after a couple of days, I sort of miss it. I all of a sudden need like, oh, I'm getting a little bit more. I wouldn't say weird, but let's say weird. But it really has a difference on my day, and the thing is, it's like sports. Like I love doing sports, but if I did not do any sports for 2 weeks, and then I do sports again, it's very hard. And it's a little bit frustrating because you don't have the muscles anymore, you don't have the stamina anymore, so you're sort of like not used to it anymore. And the same with meditation, because you sort of need to train and train and train, then it's getting better. Similar to sports, sometimes you have good days and you're just like running for 3 hours and everything is perfect, and sometimes it's not so good, but you need to do it consistently.
Well, one thing I would say, maybe I should try meditation. I've never tried, but I would say that my state, my emotional state is flat throughout my whole life. So I don't get very many highs or lows or anything. I have no swings in mood. I'm just not like that. I've never felt boredom with things. Yeah. So I am always interested. There's always something I'm interested in. I'm always engaged. I have always something to do. I am never unhappy, whatever that means. Yeah. But I'm not likely to go woohoo, and scream and shout. I'm not. So maybe I don't know if that's good or not. But I'm very.
Here's the thing. Like if you meditate, you train to just shut up your brain for at least like 15 minutes, and this all of a sudden gives you entirely new perspectives. And this, I absolutely hear what you just said, that there's constantly something and. Like, even though it's the same emotional state, but there's always something, right?
It's true. Yeah, there's always something to think about.
And shutting this up for at least like a couple of minutes a day gives you a new perspective on some things.
Yeah, I've never tried that. I think the closest this is definitely not the closest, but is listening to music. So, like last night, I didn't play a game or I didn't read a book. I just had a soundtrack and I listened to music, and that was it. And it's relaxing. It's not meditation. I wouldn't, obviously you wouldn't confuse it with that, but it's as close as I get to just, I'm not doing anything for that period of time. I'm just, but I'm doing something, I guess. I'm listening to the song. That's true. I'm listening to the music structure or whatever you're doing. So, yeah. Anyway, we're off topic of game development. I know. Boring your shit.
So we already wow, you spend already so much time with us. I have 2 more very pressing questions, and I think then. So the first one, it's 2 easy questions. No worries.
I worry about the easy questions, I must say.
What are the most important games in your life? So which one were the ones having the biggest impact on you, maybe life changers? Easy questions.
we both know they're not easy. Honestly, they're obviously answers I could give, but I'm really trying to think about the life-changing questions, the moments that either decided that's what I want to do, or I don't know. There's no easy answer to that. there are games I thought were amazing. None of them are recent, I should say. The obvious answers are Half-Life 1, the first Half-Life that came out. It was fantastic, genuinely amazing. The first Halo, I loved as well. But I'm not sure if they're the most influential. I think maybe the ones that are most influential, the ones earlier in my childhood, in the ZX Spectrum or the Commodore Amiga, which is the most influential computer in my life. That computer changed my life. Maybe not necessarily one individual game.
Okay.
But that computer and its ability to stimulate my imagination was off the charts. I mean, incredible, because firstly it came with a mouse, which meant I could draw. I was into art as well. So I always thought I'd be an artist. That was my first thing. I thought I'd be either a musician or an artist. I would draw. And so when, I didn't explain this earlier, but I sort of did some art for video games when I was 15. So I was drawing loading screens for games, for a local games company. And they said, do you want to come and join the company? When I was 15, I didn't have any qualifications. You're too young, right? So that computer and its audio abilities and its graphical capabilities, the Commodore Amiga, as a machine to stimulate my imagination as a teenager, is nothing else since. Even that Unreal demo the other day, talking about Unreal, whatever. That was nothing to seeing the Commodore Amiga at 15 years old. So so it's not a game for me. It's a machine and its capabilities to unlock potential.
This is very powerful, yeah.
Yeah. The other computer that did that for me was the first Apple Mac that I got, because it had Unix underneath, but it was very creative computer. I found PCs, this is year 2000 maybe, PCs are very creatively very difficult, let's say. So I wanted to make music and do stuff, and it just wasn't that easy. And so when I got a Mac, and there was things like GarageBand, it was like, yeah, okay, let's make some music, or I was like, wow, again, that was the computer of the time that enabled, it got the things out of my head and let me do the things I wanted to make. So the best, again, these aren't necessarily the best games, but these were the tools that unlocked my imagination in the same way a game could inspire you to create. I think more about the computers that inspired me to create.
That's very powerful message you're sending here.
Games, I tons I could talk about, but they're all from the probably the 80s or the 90s, because that's when I was influenced. That's when I was being influenced at that age. Yeah. As a man in my mid to late 40s, I don't think I'm much harder to impress. I've seen a lot of games, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's interesting, but I've seen it before. It's just a bit better, But seeing something for the first time, wow, now we're talking. That's going to stay with you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I look forward to being impressed again. I look forward to seeing the next game that really makes me go, wow.
Was there any of those in the recent years?
No, there's not. No, they're competent, they're good, and I enjoy them.
No, but
there's
game changers.
No, hasn't happened. What about you? Has anything been a monumental reframed your life because the game is so good?
This is a difficult question to ask. I don't know.
See, not so easy, is it?
I never think about being asked questions. They haven't seen that coming. Yeah. I mean, in the past there have been a big game changers, like the ones which sort of got me into games. Like the first games I ever played were really important for me. But in recent years, that's a good question.
I've thought of one recent example. I was thinking about this the other day, that I play a lot of Ubisoft games, and I would say I enjoy them. I play them quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I would also describe them as bland.
Yeah.
They are like wallpaper paste or something. It's like I enjoy them. I know what I'm getting, and they're good at serving that up.
Yeah.
So I played the Division, I played the Assassin's Creeds, and I would definitely say I got fun. But if you ask me what was the highlight of that game, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
And I was comparing this the other night to things like The Last of Us. And again, I don't want to... Sorry, there's a mild spoiler, but it's not really. In The Last of Us, Is the game as good? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a moment in it where these giraffes, these animals, just walk across the cityscape, right? And I remember that about, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years. I can't even remember when it came out. A long time later, I remember that as an emotional moment where I was like, wow. Now, in parts, that game is maybe patchy. I bounced off it the first time I tried to play it. I hated it, I bounced off. And the guys in player research said, you got to go back and finish it, it's good. And I was like, oh, God, okay. I went back, I did finish the game, and that giraffe moment was a highlight. And Ubisoft games, although I enjoy them, there's no highlight for them. They're just good at delivering this. They're a 7 out of 10, you know? Whereas, so it's an interesting discussion. What do you want? Do you want to create a moment that is so emotionally powerful that people will remember it 10 years later, but other bits of your game may not be as good? Or do you want to be very competent, and do you want to be like a warm blanket? It's comfortable and it's nice, but it's a little bit boring to a certain extent. Not boring is the wrong word. It's not boring. It's maybe forgettable, you know? Will I remember The Division in 10 years? Very unlikely. Very unlikely.
I hear you. Like the Last of Us. Like for me, I had this moment with Uncharted. Like Uncharted was for me really so impressive, like from the beginning to the end, because you're always in this movie, and this was like a movie I would love to live in.
Yeah, it's another one. Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah.
I mean, games in the past used to do this with their set pieces, right? They had these high production values moments in the game when they hoped the player would remember something or feel something. And some of them worked, and some were just, just big moments in the game when they had no emotional impact. They might have had graphical fidelity and lots of things crashing in, but maybe they didn't have an emotional connection. And I thought The Last of Us had that emotional component. And I think that's important for, changing someone or staying with them or having an impression,
I am sort of impressed. I'm gonna, I'm on a thin line here, but with getting over it with Bennett 40. Have you played that one?
Yeah.
I have a really weird obsession with that game. I don't know, but I think he hit a very interesting spot.
Yeah, he is.
It's not like I would never say that I like that game, but it hits some really interesting emotions and I think in players in general. So I think he had this.
He's certainly quite an interesting game designer in general. Going against the trend of.
Yeah. No.
I think he does think deeper about what games could be.
Yeah. So this was something which I had in my mind just as a game which I will certainly remember for any reasons.
So somebody in the chat room says, "We all know you love it."
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they're talking about, but which game?
Yeah. I talk a lot about Bennett 40's game, and I streamed it sometimes, and it was not a good experience for anyone. And now I'm only playing it like hidden in my basement.
Yeah, it does make me wonder what if games were made by people with a different background. I think he had a philosophy background. I can't remember exactly what his background was.
I'm not sure, isn't it computer science? But he was at Princeton, something like that.
He was somewhere else. He was at Oxford or something before that. I can't. Was it? Oh my goodness, I've forgotten. Anyway, yes.
I think computer science in Princeton. That's my guess.
Okay. I'm sure you would know. I bet you've spotted up on him. So. But yes, I wonder if games were made by different people, what else we would get. The fact that, you go to game design school and it's like, this is games. This is what they are. This is how they're going to be. And we get the same old thing. And the fact that, we struggle to have a lasting impression in a modern game. It's like, because we keep making the same thing made by the same types of people. And I think your project's quite interesting, your initiative to play games from around the world. Yeah. It's like, well, there's lots of problems here. First of all, the tools to make games are quite complex.
Yeah.
So you do need training mostly on how to make a game. But maybe this is where co-design could come in. What if you have someone who can technically knows how to make the game, but the ideas, the concepts come from people, they've no idea what games could be. They're just talking about what makes interesting emotional connections. How can I make you think about something or care about something?
And here's the thing, I so much agree that that it, like, if you involve people from different disciplines into the game development process, it makes the games so much more interesting. The same what you just said, that you need to read books outside of your comfort zone or outside of your box, and you just mentioned this was an interesting point from Josh Sawyer. So he was with us last week or some weeks ago, here, and what he mentioned was because I asked him, hey, you have a very extraordinary background compared to how you came into the games industry, and he was like, no, I haven't. Back then there was no game design programs, and we also no specialized games engineering programs, so people who came into the games industry were from all different fields. That's so true, and yeah, I cannot agree more that I think the more interests you put, or creativities, or people with different interests you put into this creative process, the more interesting your game design aspects will be.
There's quite a few games that were Games of the Year, either awarded or nominated at the end of 2019.
Yeah.
And they're in my Steam library, and I looked at them all. I just couldn't get interested in playing any of them.
Yeah.
I was like, I just can't do another one of those games, And so I ended up playing a bunch of indie games because they were just short, quirky, exciting. And I got tons of fun that way. But all these games that seemingly were listed as, these are amazing, these are the award winners. It was like, really?
No.
I just and I tried them. I tried to find the fun in them. And I feel they bounced off every single one, One of them was Control. So I loved Alan Wake. I loved when it first came. I finished the game. I definitely would have loved a sequel. And I tried Control, made by the same people, and I should have liked it by all accounts. Nope. I just couldn't get into the thing, And
Interesting.
There was a bunch of them, by the way. It was a ton of games that were nominated for Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds, Disco Elysium. Like I say, a ton of these things that were nominated, and not one of them stuck with me. So, yeah, maybe it was my mood. Who knows? Yeah.
Okay, so this was the first easy question. Maybe the last small little nice question, easy question for you today. What are the
You're laughing.
Yeah. What are the most important things you would tell either a student or a young indie developer as a takeaway?
Have you been listening to Tim Ferriss?
Easy questions.
I thought you were going to say, if I was to put a message on a billboard, what would I put?
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking of that. Those were the recent ones, right?
What message would I'm trying to think back to how I'm different today to how I was different than a student. I don't know. I think it's dangerous to tell people what. I think explore what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really like what you're doing? And do you think you're good enough to make a difference? So there's a few bits of the story I never told, which are related to this. When I was an academic, my university had a program where you could go to a company for experience, work experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'll cut this short, but I went to Unity over in Copenhagen. And I was on a 3-month sabbatical. So I went to Unity, and I was the fourth person there. So you'd, David Helgeson, Joachim Ante, who wrote the engine, the CTO, and Aris, the graphics programmer, and then me, basically. And Nicholas was around somewhere at the time. And I was all known as a computer scientist, right? I was into computer programming at the time. And I realized when I was at Unity that my computer programming was terrible, and I would never make a difference to Unity as a computer programmer. I was in no way comparable to the skills of these two guys. So I was on the verge of transitioning from computer science to human-computer interaction. 2006, that was like I was moving, right? I started to move, but I hadn't moved fully. And so one thing I learned about Unity was when I saw someone who was amazing at it, like changed the world amazing at it, I was not like them. I would never be like them. So I came away thinking, well, if I can't be like that, what could I be good at? And I thought, well, maybe I could make a difference about human-computer interaction. What if I could do something that would change the world a little bit in that field? And I thought I could maybe do that. And so, although I was a failure to impress at Unity, I did very little for those guys. I was no use to them as such. It changed me enormously as a person to realize what I was not. I was not that, but I might become something else. And so that was my new path. That was the branch. That was the fork. Like, it is not route A, but I could have route B. And if route B failed, then I might have explored a route C. But route B was okay. I think it worked out pretty well. I didn't know that at the time, but I think it's important for a student to realize, do explore, but do explore. Be honest with your strengths. Are you happy being okay? I was an okay computer programmer, right? I could do it, and I could, in C at least, I could do it pretty well. I do whatever I wanted. If I wanted something to happen, I would probably get it done. So I was not a bad computer programmer, but I was not the world's best. I was not a Joachim Ante, or a Tim Sweeney, right?
Yeah.
So I decided, well, that would be eventually unfulfilling. If I go down that path, I will probably be not happy. So yes, I think explore your series of strengths. If you're not good at something, either do you want to get better at it, whatever that means? Do you want to narrow your focus? I'm not the world's best computer programmer, but I will be the world's best physics programmer, shader programmer, systems programmer. I'll be, you could focus until you are the world's best at that niche. Or maybe you've got another thing. I'm going to combine my love of programming with another area, and I'll be great at that. It's also worth saying you don't have to be the best. Obviously, that's true. It's just whatever you don't get satisfaction from. I personally did not get satisfaction from knowing that I couldn't create the things that I always wanted. In C, to a certain extent, I could, but could I have created a game engine or a game itself? I don't know. I wasn't good enough to create the things in my head in a game, and that eventually would have left me unfulfilled. So that's what I would say to the student: is understand and be honest with yourself. What do you think you're good at? Do you want to pursue that at least for the next 5 to 10 years? Because in all honesty, it's going to take you that long to first to become good, and then practice it, and then do it and convince others you're good at it. It's going to take a long time, right? It's not quick. So what does your possible journeys look like? Your exercise, your homework for tonight. If I was being an academic again,
please.
Your homework is to say, what am I doing? If I get down this path on this games course, what does the end result, what could it look like? And that's draw 2 or 3 possibilities. Either I do my degree and I stay doing that. I continue my education as path 1. I finish my bachelor's or master's or whatever. I do the next thing. Route 2 is I go and I leave, get my degree, and I start a company. What does that look like? Or path 3 is I finish my degree and I start a company. What does that look like? There's more paths, by the way, but there's 3 obvious ones that you're typically faced with at the end of your degree. More study, join a company, start a company. Others are possible. I don't want to restrict you to three things. But for those 3 things, which one immediately grabs your attention, and identify why it grabs your attention? When I finished my bachelor's degree, I did a Bachelor of Engineering, I said, I am never going to study again. And I took the summer off, as you do, before you start and I applied for jobs, and I had a few jobs lined up. So I applied for jobs, and I got the jobs as a software engineer. And I looked at these companies and what they made, and I thought, that looks really boring. And I knew that if I did that, it would be easy, but it didn't excite me. I was still interested in computer graphics. And I had 2 further research, further study positions open. One was for an MPhil in speech and language processing at Cambridge University. Mm-hmm. One was for a PhD in graphics at my local university. I know this is just between us. I would say my local university was a solid third-rate university. Apologies to anybody who's at my university. So I had an MPhil open at a very world-prestigious university, but not quite my passion, so speech and language, or my third-rate university, but exactly my passion, computer graphics. And I stuck with my passion. So I put the passion above everything else.
That's great.
So that was the end of my bachelor's, where your students probably are. And by the way, I did that at every position. When I left my academic job to get a other job, what did I love came before everything else, like the money or location or everything else. In fact, every time I've moved jobs, I've lost money every single time. My salary was up. I am not recommending this to your students, by the way. I gave a talk once on how every time I moved, my salary, at least initially, went down, and it of course came back to, so I can honestly say, and I can prove it, that I've never taken a job for money because I've lost every single move that I made. But I did love the transition. Every time I moved, I could tell you exactly why I did it.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
So that's what I will say to them. I'm trying to read their comments. I say, oh my goodness, what do they say?
I think there's a conversation about skiing in Austria already, so it's already escalating.
This is a game dev lecture from Austria because they're skiing.
Yeah, do you ski?
I do not ski. I tried it once when I was younger. But there's not many skiing opportunities in England, I must say, or Ireland, where I grew up. But
yeah, do you have any?
No, I don't think so.
No. Right.
No. We've got a beach of sorts.
So what would you put up on a billboard?
That's my question. You can't.
You just threw it out there.
I don't know if I have anything as profound as worth putting on a billboard. I would just come back to something. It would sound horribly trite and obvious, like do what you like. Do the thing that you think will make a difference. It's not just that you like it. I don't think that's enough, actually. It's I think figuring out what you want. This is not going to fit on a billboard. I'm already waffling, but because things like saying, do what interests you. It's easy to do things that interest you, but they may not make any difference. But then again, you may not want to make a difference, right? People may just want to do something because they like it. So why do you do what you do? For me personally, making a difference is important. It's one of the values. There's things I could do that will be fulfilling personally, but nobody else would. It wouldn't make a difference to anybody else's life.
Yeah.
So I find things that I find interesting to pursue that I think will make other people's lives better as well. Like game designers in my case. Mm-hmm. I do not spend my time thinking about games user researchers. I spend most of my time thinking about games teams or games researchers, game designers. So that when I think about things to do, that's the process I go through to think about why would I choose A over B.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, the meaning of life or anything, this is a very, very, very difficult thing to think of. So you just put yourself on a very, There's I read a really, really good a book about that by Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychologist, The Man's Search for Meaning, because he was one of the survivors from the concentration camps. And if you're in a concentration camps, I mean, obviously, finding again, hope or some sort of a meaning in life is difficult, but he puts it in a very, very good way. And obviously this is also always depending on your situation and what sort of person you are, but there are always ways how to find a meaning in your life, and everyone has a different perspective on that. And I think it's just important that you get to know your perspective and what's important to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. This was a long conversation, but it was fantastic.
And I feel that we talked about games user research for like 2 nanoseconds, and then we quickly move on to other things.
But it was fantastic. It would be lovely to talk about other insights in the future as well. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks you, Johanna, as well, for inviting me on, because I was a bit nervous about, speaking to your students and I feel bad about advising people. I mean, I've no right to advise people about what to do or anything like that. I can just say what I find interesting. I can certainly talk about how I do it, but do not take any advice from anything I've said, because you need to figure that stuff out,
No, but I think, again, it's sometimes really nice to get first impulses and first directions, and this was so helpful for that. So thanks a lot. This was grand.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
And sorry for keeping you away from your nap.
I had it earlier. It's fine. I had a small meditation on the balcony. Yes.
Meditation, yes. Okay, so.
And thank you to the stream comments as well. Thanks for the encouragement from your students.
Can we please have a nice round of virtual applause for Graham for joining us tonight and giving us so many insights, and also so many lovely also personal insights. So, yay! Virtual applause.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, and
you too.
Bye.
Thanks, Johanna. Bye.
Bye,
See you soon.
Everyone.
Bye, students.